At this stage, we don't know what's happened to this girl.
Who has not been seen since 7:15 p.m.
I didn't know what to do.
Bailey is innocent, I curse you all.
The following stories tell the tale of 3 Tinder dates that started out normal but ended horrifically with people being killed in the most brutal ways. Grace Millane was a stunning girl who was born in Essex, England in 1996. She was a friendly, creative person who loved her family. She graduated from college with a degree in advertising and marketing from the University of Lincoln, and she was very excited about starting her career and discovering all that life had to offer her. But before she was going to join the workforce, she had planned a special adventure. For years, she had been saving up so that she could go on a lengthy backpacking trip to explore the world. Proving her truly kind and compassionate nature, Grace did something incredibly generous before leaving for her trip. She cut off much of her long, beautiful hair and donated it so that it could be used to make wigs for those in need. She truly had a heart of gold. In October of 2018, Grace would leave her family, friends, and life as she knew it behind to start her travel adventures. The first stop off her list was Peru, followed by South America. She made sure that her family and friends back home could keep up with her adventures by documenting her experiences on social media. She was with other travelers she knew during this time and appeared to be all smiles on social media. Around a month after Grace left for her trip, she would arrive alone in New Zealand and would eventually check into a hotel called the Base Backpackers. There were a few other people she knew that were staying there at the time. While spending time in New Zealand, Grace was using the dating app Tinder and ended up connecting with a man through the app. The pair arranged to go on a date. On the evening of October 1st, 2018, Grace got dressed up and left the hotel to meet this man. She had been hesitant to meet up with him at first. After all, he was a stranger to her and she was in a different country. He was rather pushy and seemed to be trying to make plans before she ever agreed to meet him. He was eventually able to convince her to come out for a chill night to get drinks. The pair were caught on video footage that evening, embracing each other after meeting. They had met up at an entertainment complex that had bars and restaurants. Just as they had planned, they would end up getting some cocktails in celebration of her 22nd birthday, which was the following day. At first, things seemed to be going pretty well, and Grace was sending text messages to one of her friends, saying that they seemed to be really connecting. The pair could later be seen on film, leaving the bar and going to another spot called the Bluestone Room. While there, they were seated at a table. At one point, Grace would momentarily get up from the table, likely go to the bathroom, and she left her handbag on the table. For some unexplained reason, as soon as she leaves, her date starts rifling through her bag. The pair eventually left the bar together that night, looking cozy as they walked away. The next morning, the day of Grace's 22nd birthday, friends and family back home began sending lots and lots of birthday messages. They were also reaching out to her on social media. Strangely, she wasn't responding to any of them. This was a cause for immediate concern from her family, and her parents would eventually contact the police. Police would end up going out to check her hotel room, and they discovered that most of her things were still there. Initially, they thought this meant nothing and that she had just stayed out with friends, but didn't tell anyone. Because there was so much security footage around the city, police were able to piece together at least most of the path that Grace had followed the night that she supposedly disappeared. But they also noticed something else they thought could be of interest in the case. On the night that Grace was last seen, she had been active on Facebook. She had changed her profile picture. Underneath the picture, a man had commented writing, "Beautiful, very radiant." It would later be determined that the man was the same man who Grace had gone out on the date with on December 1st. He was 26-year-old Jesse Kempson. Before commenting on Grace's picture, Jesse had written a very long, strange message on his own page. It discussed different mistakes he had made throughout his life and how these mistakes had hurt others and how sorry he was for that. I've done a lot of reflection over time and have narrowed down the cause of it all. With that being said, you all deserve to know. My clear arrogance and selfishness has truly affected the relationship I have with people in my personal life. Jesse went on to say that he had recently been diagnosed with severe anxiety and was going to be taking medication to help cope with it. It was all very strange. But who exactly was Jesse, and what, if anything, had he to do with Grace's apparent disappearance? Police soon began to gather information about this man. They would find out that he was raised by his grandparents and had a strained relationship with almost all of his family. He was known for being a habitual liar and would make up stories to try and get attention or make himself look good. He lied about everything, from claiming he was dying of cancer to claiming he was a famous softball player. Despite what he told others, Jesse's real job had been in telephone sales, which he would eventually lose due to his constant lying. In fact, the day he lost his job happened to be the same day he met Grace. Police knew he was likely the last person who had seen Grace, so they called him for questioning. When asked about Grace, he said,
So I was talking to Grace on Tinder.
Yeah.
We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City. And then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar.
He explained to the investigators that the reason he had decided to meet Grace at a public place is because he was afraid of being catfished. That's when someone tricks a potential romantic interest into believing that they are someone that they're not by using someone else's pictures. He said he felt as if he would be safer if they were in public, where security would be nearby. When police expressed how serious the situation was and how worried they were about Grace, Jesse didn't seem particularly worked up.
We're very, very concerned for her safety risks. It's entirely possible that she's been the victim of foul play.
Okay.
You understand what that means?
Yeah.
Investigators asked Jesse if he would be willing to provide a DNA sample, and he's all too eager to agree.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know I haven't done anything wrong, so I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Again, police seem to be trying to get Jesse to realize the extreme severity of the situation.
At this stage, we don't know what's happened to this girl.
Okay.
It's possible that somebody has killed her. Okay. You
Okay.
understand that?
Yeah.
She might, when I say foul play, I mean that someone might have murdered her. I don't know if she's been murdered or not yet. She may be alive and well.
Okay.
But she might also be dead. Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
Following the interview, Jesse seemed to be more worried and said,
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Have I been arrested for something I didn't do?
You haven't been arrested.
Oh,
The officer replies that he has not yet been arrested. Jesse claimed that the date had not only gone well, but that he and Grace made plans to hang out together the following day. However, when he tried to contact her again, he realized that she had unmatched with him and that their communication ended then. As police continued to sort through lots and lots of security video footage from the night that Grace was last seen, some parts of Jesse's story didn't seem to be adding up. For example, Jesse said that he and Grace had hugged goodbye and parted ways on the city street. However, footage from the hotel where Jesse was staying showed that they actually arrived together that night while arm in arm. Grace still seems to be all smiles as they get off together on the same floor that Jesse's room was on. However, Grace would never be seen leaving that hotel again. What happened that night with her and Jesse? And was it possible that he was the one who actually hurt her? The next day, the morning of Grace's birthday, Jesse is seen entering the hotel elevator alone, even glancing briefly at the security camera inside of the elevator. Video footage showed him then leaving the hotel. Throughout the day, he would go shopping for some very suspicious items, including a suitcase and cleaning supplies. After this, he takes a taxi to a rental car company, and when he gets there, he rents a red Toyota Corolla. Despite everything going on, Jesse would end up meeting yet another woman from Tinder that very night. But his behavior was so strange and unsettling to the woman that she ended up leaving early. He was allegedly discussing the topic of burying bodies, and he was making up lies about having police officer friends. That woman would soon leave and never contact him again. After the very unsuccessful date, Jesse would go out yet again. This time he rented a carpet cleaner and was also captured on video surveillance. When staff asked him what he needed the carpet cleaner for, he explained that he was going to tend to some red wine stains on the carpet. Later that night, Jesse would very suspiciously load up a cart with two seemingly heavy suitcases and take them out to the rental car he had just gotten. But his suspicious activity didn't end there. Early the next morning, Jesse left the hotel yet again, and this time he bought a shovel. He also power washed the Toyota car rental, which he would later return to the company he got it from. It was December 5th when Grace was officially reported as missing. This was also the day that Jesse would be caught on surveillance footage going around town and dumping objects in random bins. Not long before Jesse returns to the hotel do the police ask him more questions. But as soon as Jesse gets in close proximity to the police car, he makes a run for it, heading off in a different direction. Police ended up chasing after Jesse and taking him back in for questioning. Meanwhile, the story of Grace's disappearance hit major news outlets.
With a public appeal for missing British backpacker Grace Millane. A short time ago, police held a press conference to appeal for sightings of the 22-year-old who has not been seen since 7:15 p.m. on Saturday night.
Meanwhile, Grace's dad, David, arrived in Auckland, New Zealand to help assist with the search for his daughter. While sitting alongside police officers at a press conference, David was visibly emotional as he asked the public for help in finding Grace and struggled to speak through tears.
I'm David Millane, Grace's dad. Thank you for coming today. As you know, Grace has been missing for several days. We last had contact with her on Saturday the 1st of December, and as a family we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter.
David would go on to explain that all throughout Grace's travels, she made sure to send her family lots and lots of updates, pictures, and messages. To go so long without contacting her family was extremely unlike her and very concerning. So, what was going on with Jesse during all of this happening? He was being considered a person of interest, and police were becoming more and more concerned that Grace may no longer be alive. Once again, Jesse sat down with the police for questioning, but this time his story was very different. His story started out with him and Grace back at his apartment and engaging in intercourse.
She started talking to me about 50 Shades of Grey. We started having, at first it was just normal, and then she asked me if we could get into bondage, having, I guess, more violent. We ended up on the floor, and then she told me to hold her throat. So I went into the shower, and then all I remember is falling asleep in the shower.
At this point in the interview, Jesse seemed to become overwhelmed and needed a break. He would later claim that he woke up and realized Grace was dead. He went into shock. He placed her body in a suitcase and drove away to bury her.
I didn't know what to do. I went downstairs and I was just, I don't know, I was all over the place.
The officer then explained to him that he would need to lead police to where Grace's body was buried. The body would be exhumed and a forensics team would examine it and find out how she had died. Jesse was then finally arrested. Despite Jesse's attempts to clean up evidence of what happened in his hotel room, there was Grace's DNA everywhere, and it was clear that she had been brutally injured before her death. By following Jesse's directions, police were able to locate Grace's body pretty quickly. Officer Scott Beard made the tragic announcement that Grace was now dead.
The area was identified late last night as a location of interest as a result of our investigative work. I can now advise that a short time ago we located a body which we believe to be Grace.
He explained that while they would still have to do tests to make sure that the body belonged to Grace, it was highly likely that it was her. Officer Beard appeared emotional as he discussed how much pain the Millane family was going through.
It is an unbearable time for the Millane family, and our hearts go out to them. Any father, any parent in this situation will struggle. Yeah, I feel for my other daughter in her 20s. We're putting a lot of support around him.
Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, came forward to publicly apologize to the Millane family for what happened to their daughter.
I cannot imagine the grief of her family and what they will be experiencing and feeling right now. And
she offered the Millane family the full support of New Zealand.
Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that.
After professionals examined Grace's body, they determined that she was suffocated. Someone would have had to have put pressure on her neck for 4 or 5 minutes to kill her, so this was no accident. Disgustingly, digital records show that after killing Grace, Jesse would look at explicit material on his phone and would also take pictures of her dead body. He was truly a monster. Jesse pleaded not guilty to Grace's death and appeared stoic and unemotional throughout his trial. His legal team claimed that Grace had died as a result of an accident and that Jesse had panicked when he realized what he had done. He was eventually found to be guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 17 years. Grace's parents, while very emotional after the sentencing, thanked New Zealand for the love the nation showed their daughter.
They've opened their hearts to Grace and her family. I cannot express our gratitude enough for all the offers and gifts of kindness that we've received over the last year.
Jesse Kempson remains behind bars. This case is particularly odd because the people involved chose to give the public hints and clues as to what happened, while all the while trying to evade justice. This story has so many twists and turns and is so dramatic that it could easily be from a movie. The story begins back in November of 2017. Sydney Loofe, a beautiful blonde-haired and blue-eyed 24-year-old, was employed at a local store in Lincoln, Nebraska. While using the app Tinder, Sydney would end up hitting it off with a woman named Bailey Boswell. The two decided to go out for a date. They had a great time and decided to hang out again the next day. Before meeting Bailey for their second date on November 15th, Sydney did her hair and makeup and snapped a quick selfie on her phone. She posted it on Snapchat and captioned it, "Ready for my date." The next day, Sydney didn't show up to work and didn't call to let anyone know that she wasn't going to be coming in. Her family and friends were immediately worried and called the police to report her missing right away, and the massive search began. It was quickly determined that her car was still parked in the driveway of her home, but she was nowhere in sight. George Loofe, Sydney's father, spoke publicly at a press conference about the search for his daughter.
Thank you for all of your prayers, and in my opinion, someone knows something. Please do the right thing.
Police knew to look into Bailey Boswell because Sydney had shown a friend of hers a picture of her. That friend was able to find Bailey's profile on Tinder and provide this information to the police. Strangely, Bailey went by the name Audrey on her Tinder profile. At this point, Bailey had already left town. At the time, this was still considered to be a missing persons case, but that was soon to change. Bailey and Sydney had messaged back and forth over 100 times before Sydney's disappearance. Their last exchange was a message Sydney sent right before meeting up with Bailey for the second time, and it signified that she was waiting outside for her. That night, Sydney would not only meet Bailey, but Bailey's boyfriend, 51-year-old Aubrey Trail. This is confusing for so many reasons. If Bailey already had a boyfriend, why was she using Tinder to meet other people? Not to mention the incredibly large age gap between her and Aubrey. By the time police realized they needed to speak with both Sydney and Aubrey, the pair were already far away from town. They did get a search warrant to search the basement apartment that they had been staying in. This was after their landlord reported that there was a pungent smell of bleach coming from down there. It was clear that they had used a huge amount of chemicals to clean up some sort of mess. But what were they covering up? They were now looking more suspicious than ever. While police were actively looking for them, the pair were posting videos online claiming that they were innocent and people were chasing them for no reason. Bailey admitted that she was with Sydney the night she disappeared, but that she had nothing to do with her disappearance and hadn't seen her since. In a strange video, Bailey can be seen wearing black sunglasses and a black hoodie while seated next to Aubrey in a car.
Good morning, Lincoln and Omaha and probably several other places. This is Aubrey Trail and this is Bailey Boswell. I guess y'all also know her as Audrey. But we spent the last few days watching ourselves being slammed and crucified in the newspapers and the news and everything else, so we thought it was time we had our say. We're not trying to defend anything. We're not trying to make you believe anything. We just feel we should get to say our side since everyone else gets to say theirs.
He went on to say that they had already been in contact with the police through their lawyers and to tell them everything they knew about the situation. He also explained that he wasn't on the run, he just couldn't go home because of how many people had it out for him and believed that he was guilty. He then finally mentioned Sydney by name.
I pray for Sydney. I hope she's found soon. I wish the family the best. I'm sorry that she wasn't with you on Thanksgiving. And that's pretty much all I can say for now.
Then it was Bailey's turn to speak.
I met her on a Tuesday. We drove around Lincoln, smoked weed, had a great time. We hit it off. I dropped her off at home, picked her up the next night at her house. We drove around, smoked weed again.
She went on to say that she and Sydney ended up smoking some other illicit substances before Bailey dropped her off at a friend's house. They reportedly had plans to go to a casino that weekend, but she had never heard from her since. The next day, Aubrey Trail came out with a video of his own. He claimed that a lot of what was said in the news and printed in newspapers was lies, and he again claimed his innocence.
The police can say or do what they want, as I can, so you'll believe what you believe.
He denied allegations that he had either killed Sydney or sold her into human trafficking. He also denied rumors that he and Bailey had dropped Sydney off at the home of a dealer.
I've never killed anyone in my life. I've never hurt a female in my life.
So, if he and Bailey weren't the ones who hurt Sydney, who did? And where was she now? The pair were on the run for a while, but police finally caught up with them at a hotel in Missouri on November 30th, and they were arrested. Police didn't have enough proof yet to charge them in connection to Sydney's death, but they could charge them for having been transporting stolen goods. Not long after, disturbing footage came out of Aubrey and Bailey visiting a Menards store the day after Sydney supposedly disappeared. They were purchasing an assortment of tools, the type of tools that a person might use if they planned to dismember a body. In early December, everyone's fears were confirmed, and Sydney's body was located in a ditch. What was left of her body was stuffed callously into a trash bag, and most of her organs had been removed. Despite how badly her body was mutilated, police could still tell it was Sydney because of a tattoo she had on her arm. 6 months later, both Bailey and Aubrey were charged in connection with Sydney's death. In his defense, Aubrey claimed that Sydney's death was an accident and that it had occurred during erotic asphyxiation. He showed little emotion and didn't seem to be sorry for what happened.
It was completely unplanned. The parties were engaged in erotic asphyxiation designed to heighten the sexual pleasure of Sydney Loofe. The next horrible, poor, bad decision was made, and that was to remove the body in pieces.
He also claimed that it was because Aubrey panicked when he realized Sydney was dead that he dismembered the body. But the prosecution didn't buy it. They claimed that Bailey and Aubrey wanted to kill someone, and they used Tinder to lure their victim. They then her and dismembered her body. Because Bailey and Sydney had been caught on video buying things like duct tape, a saw, bleach, and knives, they looked exceptionally guilty. What happened next is probably the last thing you could ever expect. While in court for trial, Aubrey screamed out,
"Bailey is innocent and I curse you all."
Stop recording.
His attempt to end his own life was unsuccessful, and ultimately both he and Bailey were convicted for several charges in connection with Sydney's death. Bailey would be sentenced to life in prison, while Aubrey was placed upon death row. He is still awaiting his execution. Meagan Tapley of Boston, Massachusetts, hoped to use Tinder to find a meaningful relationship. The 24-year-old veterinary assistant met a 25-year-old bodybuilder by the name of Eric Stelzer through the dating app. Eric was very into weightlifting and would post YouTube videos teaching others how to achieve the body of their dreams.
What's up, guys? Eric Stelzer here.
Another video shows him smiling while lifting dumbbells at the gym and looking into the camera. From the outside, Eric appears to be a confident, healthy, and good-looking guy who has his life together. But there was so much more going on behind the scenes that many people didn't see. Eric reportedly suffered from mental health problems and would sometimes experience paranoia and delusions and would behave erratically. These were things he was supposedly considering seeking treatment for, and some of his family members were quite worried about. In fact, they even reportedly called for paramedics on Christmas Day of 2018. They claimed that Eric was having a psychotic breakdown and needed to be hospitalized. But when the EMTs arrived and observed him, they determined that hospitalization was not necessary. Unfortunately, irreversible tragic events would soon occur that may have been prevented if this hospitalization did occur. After Meagan and Eric connected through Tinder, they would end up spending time at Eric's house in late December of 2018. While it's unclear what details occurred that led up to this point, Eric would ultimately end up lashing out at Meagan and viciously stabbing her over and over again with a knife on her face. Meagan fought back and, even while brutally wounded, attempted desperately to escape this house of horrors. But this man greatly overpowered her, standing at an impressive 6'7". Luckily, neighbors heard her screams for help, and the police were called to the scene. When police arrived, they entered the house and went up to the second floor, where they found a barricaded door. They forced entry and found Eric attacking Meagan, and they heard her screaming, "Help me, he's killing me, help me, he's killing me." They were both naked and covered in gore. Eric was pinning Meagan down and holding a piece of broken glass to her neck. It took extensive efforts for them to bring him down. He was saying nonsensical things, including claiming he was God and Meagan was the devil. They had to use a stun gun 4 times to bring Eric to the ground. Meanwhile, while Eric was being brought into police custody, Meagan was being rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. In fact, there is even concern that if she was to survive, she may have to lose one of her eyes. While police tried to take Eric in for actual questioning, he would ultimately be found unresponsive. He would later die by the time he reached the hospital. Harry Seltzer, Eric's father, demanded answers for what could have happened to his son during police custody that would have ultimately led to Eric's death.
He's my son. I want to find out what happened.
While some criticized the police involved in this case for using too much force on Eric, the police chief above these officers commended their efforts and claimed that if they hadn't acted as they did, Meagan, the innocent victim, would have likely died. Thanks to these officers and many hardworking doctors, Meagan did not die. In fact, in time, she made a full recovery. On December 27th of 2019, Meagan took to Facebook to share an article featuring her dramatic rescue. She thanked the officers for saving her life, and she also thanked her community for donating to a GoFundMe that allowed her to pay off her many hospital bills. A year ago today, I was in hell. I went through the most excruciating pain imaginable, but yet I'm still here, refusing to give up, refusing to die in such pain, and refusing to leave my family saved my life. But I didn't fight alone. Right when I thought it was all over, I heard a faint voice calling for me, and I knew I would be saved. Thanks to these amazing officers, I was able to celebrate another Christmas, she wrote. As for Eric, a toxology report was conducted, and it was determined that he had a number of illicit substances in his system, and that his heart was enlarged and unstable. It was also determined that he died due to heart problems, not by any force used by the police to bring him down. The officers were cleared of any wrongdoing associated with the case.